Welcome to the Apostolic Center podcast. We're so glad that you're joining. Please like, subscribe, and share this to anyone you know. It will be a marriage podcast, and we will have some resources linked at the bottom. So please feel free to use those. It's a communication tool to help you in your marriage. And we'd like to welcome Brother and Sister Pounds. Welcome to the AC podcast. We're so glad to be back again, and we're so glad to have Brother Pounds and Sister Pounds with us. Thanks for being with us. I was talking with Harrison right before we started, and this will be the third podcast you've done with us, and you've done it in all three of our studios. So,
Yeah, it's neat to see how much has grown.
yeah, we're honored to have you, and Sister Pounds, we're honored to have you too. We kind of want to talk about marriage in this podcast. We've done a couple of different podcasts about preaching, tips, and stuff like that, but I think it'd be really beneficial for our audience to kind of go through some marriage lessons and kind of just get your guys' story. I think it'd be very beneficial to everybody. So why don't you kind of start us off at the beginning of where you guys began, and we'll kind of go from there.
Sounds good. Well, we met in Stockton, California, and in 1993. It was the end of 92, beginning of 93. And so I was going to Bible college. She was in the church. Her dad was in the Bible college with me. And it was kind of a unique setting. I first saw her at Landmark, the big conference they've got. The first night, there's 5,000 people. I'm coordinating the altar call, overseeing the people, and I realized one of my areas didn't have a person there working the altar in that area, in that zone. So I jumped off the platform, ran over there, and started filling in, just praying with people. And there was a lady that was praying for the Holy Ghost. And it was really neat because as we were praying, she gets the Holy Ghost. I look at her, she smiles, and I thought, hey. And so it was a God thing. And so it was really kind of a neat moment. Afterwards, I told one of my friends about it. I said, man, there's this girl. Wow. And he said, well, go talk to her. I said, no, I'm going to wait. I'm going to pray. And if it's God's will, how we play the, if it's God's will thing. And so I was like, I'm going to wait and see what happens. And I'm going to pray about it. And the next night, my friend's like, hey, man, there's this girl at my work. And, I'm going to go talk to her. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to date her. I'm going to this and that. And so here I am sitting up in the balcony, watching the altar, watching what's happening, watching, the preaching, and trying to get a game plan in my mind of where I'm going to position everybody for altar call to make sure all my zones were covered. And there I am sitting there, and my friend starts like poking me. Hey, there she is, man. She was in a crushed, like burgundy red velvet dress. Her hair was curled and down, and here she comes walking by, and my buddy's like, "That's her, that's her." I was like, "Dude, that's my angel from last night." And he's like, "You're stupid, man. I'm gonna talk to her." So I said, "Okay, whatever." And we go on, and I thought, I missed my moment, whatever. If it's God's will, he'll bring it all back around. Next thing you know, I see her at the church. And I thought, no way, this is it. This is the one. And so I see her at a distance. I walk out. I was getting ready to go out with all my friends from Bible college. And as I was walking out, I had said, Lord, if it's your will, she's going to do something that's totally not like her. She's going to come up to me. She's going to introduce herself to me. And you're going to make it so that it's unique. And I know this is her. So as I come through the double doors, I was looking for one of my friends. All of a sudden, I look up, and there she was. I turned around. She's standing right there, and she says, hi, my name is Carrie, and I normally wouldn't do this, but I felt like I needed to introduce myself to you. And I was like,
Perfect.
this is the will of God. Angels were singing. It was awesome. And so we stood there and talked for just a minute. I said, hey, I'm going out with all the friends from Bible college. You want to join us? She said, you need to ask my dad. I said, all right, where is he? Oh, he's inside. So we walk in there. I march right up to him. And I said, hi, my name is Greg, and I want to no. I mean, it was just a straight up hard no. I said, sir, I didn't even get to finish. I want to ask you if she can go with a big group of us. We're all going out to eat. He said, what part of no didn't you understand? And I was looking. He goes, you can walk away now. And I was like, oh, my God. So I looked at her, and she goes, sorry. So I walked away. And
Did you think your dad was going to do that when he was going to ask?
I had a feeling, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So 2 weeks goes by, and we kind of, see each other in passing at church and stuff. And so I go back up to her again, and she's like, you're going to have to convince my dad. And I said, okay. So I go back up to him again and said, sir, I'd like to, get to know your daughter, and I'd like to invite you and your wife. And he said, no. I mean, just straight up hardcore no again. And so I looked at her and said, I'm sorry, I tried. I left. Well, the next day I'm walking to class, and this pickup truck pulls up next to me real slow. And I look over, and it's her dad, and he's looking at me. And he rolls the window down, and he says, get in. I was like, okay. So he starts driving. Now, Stockton is like the hood, okay? He starts driving me through like the bad part of Stockton. And I'm thinking, oh, man, I'm glad I came from a rough neighborhood. Like, if I have to, I can get out of here. Who is this guy? What's he going to do to me? And he's driving. He's not saying anything. He just keeps looking over at me real slow and has just got this mean look on his face. He pulls up at a park, and he's just sitting there. He just stares at me. And I'm thinking, this is so awkward right now. So the only thing I could think of, I said, hey, you want to go get a donut? And I start laughing, and he looks at me, and he has this puzzled look. He goes, a donut? I was like, yeah, let's go get a donut. I go, there's a great donut shop down here. So we drive down to this donut shop. We're sitting there in front, and he parks, and he goes, what do you want with my daughter? The only thing that came out of my mouth was, I looked at him and said, I'm going to marry her, sir. And he said, marry her? You don't even know her. And I said, sir, you'll never have to worry about her. I'll take care of her the rest of her life. She'll be in good hands. I'll protect her. I'll take care of her. He goes, this is crazy. I don't even understand why we're doing this. And so it got quiet, and I said, you want to go in and get a donut? He said, no, I don't want a donut. And so finally he goes, I'm going to let you talk to her, but if you hurt her, you're going to have to deal with me. Well, from there, you can talk a little bit and tell us what happened from there, because
there. So leading up to that, I'd only been in church for 2 years. So it was a relationship that, I just wanted to make sure that everything was, this was the one, this was it. I didn't want to date, a bunch of people. So when we finally entered into courtship, right? Mm-hmm. We were both praying, is this the one? Is this the one? All the way up until the day we walked up to the altar, and
I still bring her to tears.
Yeah.
Awesome. I was the one.
Yes, but yes, but throughout our courtship, 4.5 years of courtship, God continued to confirm that he was the one.
Yeah. Yeah, there were several confirmations over and over and over. Mm-hmm. And it was really neat because, like for a little while I started playing baseball on an expansion league team. And my pastor was like, you can play as long as it doesn't interfere with church. And he's like, you've got a call of God on your life. And right before he passed away, Bishop Lee Davis from Riverside, California, looked at me and he said, play baseball and go to hell, or pursue the ministry and have a happy life. And I was like, man, I just started playing, it's on Saturdays. Well, she was all excited as long as it didn't interfere with church and ministry. But he looked at me and he said, son, she's the one. He said, but you got to quit baseball and you got to pursue ministry. I said, okay. He said, get your bills paid off and then we'll talk again. Well, he ended up passing away. And
but that was one of his main goals for us, was for both of us to get involved in ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So we poured ourselves into anything we can get involved in, kids church, choir, anything Bible
pastor
quizzing.
asked, we said yes.
We did. We did. And then he passed away. And Pastor Fraley came on.
Yeah.
And Pastor Fraley sent him evangelizing. And so he went evangelizing for 2 years.
A little over a year and a half.
A little over a year and a half.
Right here in the Midwest. So all of this area right here.
Mm-hmm. And through that, when evangelists, they go, pastors try to set them up with their daughters and everything else. I was like, okay, year and a half later, I'm thinking, all right, it's coming down to the wire now. Now we're already 3 years into dating.
3 years, yeah.
And I told God, I said, all right, Lord, you've proven to me twice already. This is the third time. He's either going to propose to me when he comes home this time. And if he doesn't, Lord, I'm leaving. This is it. This is the final cutoff. Then he came home. And that night, all I can remember was, okay, I know he has to leave tonight. And we had a special choir practice with Timothy Spell. And usually those run over just a little bit. And I thought, all I want to do is just go have dinner with them. And I want to ask him, hey, is this the time? Is anything going to come of this? Because if not, when you leave, I'm leaving. This is it. And so Pastor Fraley came in during choir practice, and he said, thank you everyone for coming to the choir practice tonight. Brother Pounds has a word for the choir. And I'm thinking, my God, this man can talk for a long time. There's going to be no dinner tonight. Mm-hmm. He's going to talk. We're going to get dismissed from choir practice. We're all going home. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this is it.
Well, what she doesn't know is while she's in there with Tim Spell, they're singing, having a good old time. Pastor calls me in the office, and Pastor Fraley says, do you have any plans on proposing to her? And I said, well, you told me I couldn't until I got my bills paid off. He said, if you don't propose to her tonight, I'm going to tell her to leave you tonight. You're not good enough to be with her. And I said, man, I'll propose right now. He said, during choir practice, let's do it. So I was like, oh man. So I was scrambling, trying to get a hold of my family, trying to get my mom down there, trying to get some flowers, something. I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening, And so the look she gave me was absolutely comical. When Brother Fraley announced I had a word, she looked at me. And it was, if she could have killed me, I would have died right there on the spot. And then all of a sudden, I took the microphone, I got down on one knee, and it was like, yeah, that was good.
It was good.
And it was awesome because we had Tim Spell there. I mean, he started singing and going crazy, and it was awesome. So,
wow.
That's awesome.
It was.
Yeah, something I always find curious with newlyweds is kind of the different mindsets they bring into the marriage.
Yeah.
And that can be hard sometimes the first 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Different opinions, different households you grow up in. How was that when you guys got married, those different mindsets coming in?
Yeah, so for
Expectations.
For me growing up, I come from a divorced home. So for me growing up, that was part of the whole reason why I wanted to make sure that everything was in order and this was the one. And for him growing up as well, his childhood wasn't, real stable as well.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure that what we were doing was God's will. We were in God's perfect will.
Yeah.
And I think through the 4.5 years of courtship really helped us to establish that before we got married, making it easier for us when we did get married, because there was a lot of things that God, I honestly, God dealt with us both during that 4 years and really, really worked on us, as far as our past and the way we grew up and what happened. God came in and God helped us through some things. and helped us to establish some boundaries within our marriage, within our home. We talked about how we were going to raise our kids, because there were things in our childhood where we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
We're not going to allow those things. Or there was things within our parents' marriages where we said, okay, there's things that they did that we're not going to do. And I think by putting those boundaries in place before we got married helped us to establish what was going to happen after marriage.
Yeah, I think the thing is, her dad had been married at this point a couple of times already, and each of those relationships just was so broken. And so for me, I had to really earn her trust, because she didn't really have a solid, good male role model. And on that, it was really unique, because for me, my dad came home from Vietnam. He was messed up, and yet he tried to be the best he could, but yet my dad was a functioning alcoholic trying to cover up PTSD. And so in that, I had made lists of things like, this is what I'm looking for in somebody, but I also made lists of things that I never wanted to become, like things that I don't want to say I hated, but things I just could not stand that I saw about my dad, or how my dad treated my mom, or how things were with us, me and my sister growing up. And then little did I know, she had been making lists. Same thing, what she was praying for in a husband, and the things that she wanted to see changed in her life. And so it was kind of unique, because when we come to that point, we were both bringing so many insecurities, wounds, past hurts, things that we had been through in life, our upbringing, brokenness. And now we're coming together as two broken individuals. And I think that's where a lot of people don't understand marriage. Everybody always says, oh, I have marriage problems. You don't really have marriage problems. You have problems that you bring into your marriage. It's your own brokenness and insecurities and trauma and wounds that you bring in, that you're learning how to work through those things together now in marriage. And I think that's one of the things that really has brought God glory, or brings God glory through marriages, is we learn how to let the Lord heal us, but then also learn how to work together with each other and take care of each other. I think she would probably agree with me. We balance each other in that she helps me with my insecurities just as much as I help her with hers. And, a lot of people say, you're so strong, you're the stronger man. Well, I got this way because I've had a good wife that's helped me to work through all those areas of my own life, then be able to practice out what we wanted to see. So,
yeah, I think one of the biggest hurdles after marriage for me was being raised by a single mom. Understanding that I have a helpmate now. I have to let him help me. It wasn't just me just.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And her mom did a tremendous job, not in church, but yet instilled some really good values in her. Yeah. And the thing about it is, her mom taught her to be independent. She had to fend for herself. There's times where she was looking out for her own, for her sister, for her brother, and taking care of things around the house, just because of everything that her mom had been through. So, it in some ways, you would look at it and say, man, that's so traumatic. But yet, absolutely, it also was a blessing, because I had a confident woman. I had somebody who was quiet, who was meek, who was to herself, but yet we can get this done. And no matter what the circumstances were, we kind of both have taken on this approach. Hey, we can make it through anything as long as we're together.
Right.
Because we help each other through the roughest spots, and balance each other out. And we make sure we work for that. It's like, even if things seem to get tough or difficult between us, it's almost like we always pull tighter together, when most people would break up and want to be apart from each other. It's weird. It's like, we've said we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to force ourselves to be together more, to do more, so that we don't grow apart. We don't immediately just fraction and break apart. So, some of these people we've talked to that have been through serious problems, they both go their own ways for a while and then come back. We both grow tighter and stronger and closer, and it's I think that's been one thing that God's really used to help us to draw closer together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just on the outside looking in, as two kids basically dating, it just seems like you guys were growing as individuals too. And what advice would you give for, people that are in that courtship?
Yeah.
I think be open with each other. You know, I think that was the greatest thing, that I was able to open up to him and let him know, look, this is my background. This is who I really am.
Yeah.
Not trying to pretend to be, the church girl and the perfect person, but letting him know, look, this is my brokenness. This is who I am. These are the areas that I need you to be strong in. These are the areas I need help in, and vice versa. He had to let me know, hey, these are my areas where, I have trouble. These are the areas that I need you to help me, bring balance. And I think communication, before marriage is the best part. And that's something that we focus on in a lot of our premarital counseling is communication.
Yeah.
Opening the lines of communication, so that way 6 months down the road you don't find out something that you should have known before marriage.
Yeah. I like using the old-fashioned word courtship. We continue to go back to that because when you think of dating and modern dating, it's all about just physical attraction. It's about
Multiple.
what looks good. Yeah.
Right.
And the thing is, you can date a bunch of people, but courtship is very intentional. It's about becoming best friends. And, we use a book, and it's The 7 Secrets of Courtship. And we get it from a website. I can't remember which one right now, but we use that with all of our young people in our church now too, because I want them to learn the value of including the parents, getting to know each other, and that it's about becoming best friends. I would say the thing about it was, no matter who I called my best friend, she was my best friend, like there was nobody more best than her. I have friends that I was close to, and yet at the same time, there's nobody closer than her. We shared each other's ambitions, dreams, goals. We talked about what we wanted to accomplish together, and I think that helped us, because where I saw a lot of other couples and people that were going through rough times, we had already solved those things. And it was like people would always tell us, man, you guys seem so mature for your age. Well, it's because we were having mature conversations. It wasn't just oh, you look good in that, oh, you're cute, or I like your hair, or we were like getting down to, hey, these are the things that I've experienced in my life that I've struggled with, and things that I've had a hard time with, and these are the things that I feel you can help me with and balance me. And so courtship was really about becoming best friends, because at the end of the day, no matter what you go through, if you lose everyone and everything, I still have her. She's my best friend. So at that point, money doesn't matter. Possessions don't matter. I have a best friend. And as long as I have her, I know I can make it through anything because I've got her. So
I hate to see when people have lost the art of friendship in marriages, when they drift apart, or they're just not friends. Maybe they rushed into it and they didn't have that foundation of friendship. That's something I'm thankful in our marriage that we've.
Yeah, that's a top reason why couples stay together statistically is companionship and friendship.
Yeah.
That's like the number one driving force to a strong marriage.
Yeah.
Now, you've done a lot of premarital counseling. I'm sure you've done counseling at your churches.
Yeah.
Marriage retreats. What are kind of the pitfalls? Like, hey, men or women, watch out for this in your marriage. Like, don't do this. Or what are kind of the common things you see?
I think I'll say one thing, and then I'm going to kind of turn to her because I think she's got a lot to say on this. But I would say the biggest thing we find is healthy boundaries. People don't establish healthy boundaries. And what I mean by that is people of the opposite sex. People don't have healthy boundaries there. Healthy boundaries with family. Family will overrun all of their time, and now there's no time for each other. But healthy boundaries would be the one thing I would say they've got to learn to set really good, strong, healthy boundaries right up front.
Right. We let them know. We talk about the circle. We talk to them about their inner circle, and the inner circle is they don't have children, it's him and her. That's your inner circle. Then there's the next circle, which is your external family. So it could be mother-in-laws, father-in-laws,
Those closest to you.
aunts, uncles, what have you. And then your circle moves out a little bit more to close friends. And sometimes even your close friends are even closer than your family. And then there's your close friends. And then there's your friends that you just go out to eat with. And then there's the outer circle where maybe it's just in passing, hi, how are you? But you don't necessarily spend time with them. And it's establishing those boundaries that, you're saying, okay, this is who I want close to my family. This is who I can sit with, who I can eat with, who it's okay if I open up because they're here to protect my family. They're not here to hurt my family. And establishing those boundaries ahead of time. Establishing boundaries with past friends. Maybe your friends that you had before marriage are not going to be your close friends after marriage. There's always a change in a season. And every season that brings change, you're going to find that those friendships and even family, relationships will change over time. And, maybe the ones that are closest to your family, like for us, it's been our friends that have been there for the last 28, 32 years that have been, closest to my kids. And, we've established that before marriage, really, what we were going to allow into our home.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the main thing, is just establishing those boundaries ahead of time.
I think the other thing, too, with the healthy boundaries was we noticed that people with time and change, for instance, family dynamics, we would watch how someone else was raising their kids and then go, okay, we need to establish a little bit more of a healthy boundary with them. And it's not that we were like turning our back on them or shutting them or anything like that. It's just we realized, hey, they're not healthy for the way we want to bring up our kids. And what they're doing is not in line with where we're going with our kids. And even within family, I mean, we've had to ask family, hey, we want you to come over, but please don't bring so-and-so. And it's not because we don't love so-and-so. It's just our home is a safe place. Our circle is a safe place. And what we didn't want was those boundaries to get blurred. And then now our kids are not going to understand where's the line, what's healthy, what's not healthy. And I think it really helped us to make it easier, because now our kids aren't telling us, well, so-and-so gets to do it. And, the response always is, well, I'm not so-and-so's parent, and we don't have to have that conversation now. Now this is the way we do it. You're a Pounds. This is the way. It's kind of like Pastor Shine Dowdy. We've talked through the years about, being careful with who's at your table. Who do you invite to sit at your table? And not everybody's welcome at your table. And that's exactly those boundaries. They help you to set those clear, defined, so that our kids will be able to easily recognize, so that they're not so easily hurt by those who are on the outer circle. And we've allowed them to see, hey, these are the areas you guard. This is where you guard your heart. You guard your conversations. You guard your emotions. But this group here, this is who you can become more intimate with. This is who you will have as lifelong friends. And this, as it gets closer to that center, the more intimate the relationship will become, and close and tight. And it's going to be a smaller circle network group of people. So,
yeah, practically, I'm curious how that plays out sometimes, because the stuff you're talking about can lead to awkward conversation.
yeah.
How do you advise people go about that conversation? If it's with family, like, we don't want this, Because a lot of people will take offense and they think you don't like them, or how does that play out?
At the end of the day, it really it has to be open, honest, and direct. Um, and there's times where you have to look at someone and say, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but please understand what I'm about to say. We cannot allow that into our home. And so this is where we've drawn our boundary. And I hope that you would respect that boundary. If they're really your friend, if they really love you the way they say they love you, then they're going to work with you and respect your boundaries. And they're going to realize you're not doing this because you don't care about them, but you're doing it because you do care about them. And I think that's what's hard, is sometimes those difficult or awkward conversations, people immediately take it as offensive, hurt, this and that. But that's where you have to be as soft as you can,
Mm-hmm.
be as direct as you can, and make sure that it's as clear as it can be. Because at the end of the day, you're the one that has to live with what happens. You're the one that has to go to bed at night and say, man, I wish I would have drawn a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Or I wish I would have had that conversation. And then something, drastic happens. We're very, like with our kids, who they hang out with, who they spend time with. We'll sit down with our kids and tell them, look, we want you to understand why we're not going to spend X amount of time with them. We're going to limit it to this because they live or they do or they're involved in things that we don't want to hurt you, to rub off on you, or to you to be exposed to. And so it just came down to the place where we had to have conversations even with our kids,
Mm-hmm.
and teach them how to start having those conversations.
Yeah.
I think it's helped even with our kids. And as our kids have watched us set boundaries in our own lives, our kids have set those same boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that when, they're in a group, if something is being said that shouldn't be said, our kids are quick to say, hey, wait a minute, we shouldn't be talking about that. Or they're quick to get up and just leave the room. And they've set those same boundaries that we've set ahead of time.
Yeah, I think they watch and see, how we've set those healthy boundaries to realize, hey, maybe it's time to pull back just a little bit. And we've taught them, don't cut people off. Don't just shun people and cut them off. That's cultish. It's like, teach them to still love people unconditionally, and at the same time, you don't have to allow them into your closest. You don't have to answer every question that people are asking. You don't have to, let them get at you emotionally and hurt you. You can be able to have a nice, healthy boundary, and then if it looks like they're coming too close, hey, this is our boundary. Let's come back to this point. We're not going to answer that question, and let's talk about something else, and immediately divert it away so that it becomes healthy again.
Yeah. I guess if you're using it to manipulate people when creating boundaries, you're doing it wrong. If
Right.
you're doing it to cut people off, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things I hear are, well, we did it this way and X turned out fine.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's like, well, what if they didn't turn out fine? Like, sometimes it's a roll of the dice. Like, that's a bad practice, and thank God they turned out okay, but
Yeah.
we're not doing it like that.
The spiritual side of things, when you look at marriage, when you look at raising kids, it is a spiritual thing first. And I take it very, very serious that before there's romance with my wife, there is a relationship with God. And before I raise my kids, there's a relationship with God. And if I could teach my kids to love God first, and then from there, love everyone else and minister to everyone else, that relationship with God will become so important. They don't care what anybody else thinks now, because now it does matter what God thinks. We live in a culture and society where everybody's like so afraid of what everybody thinks. They're offended. They're so sensitive. And then they think about God last. And it's God should be guiding our values. God should be guiding our relationships. And we should be looking at it from his perspective. Is this healthy? Is this the way God wants us to interact with these? I mean, look at Jesus. I mean, he walks into a group and says, "You vipers," and
Right.
I mean, he goes off on them. He wasn't afraid to confront, but he was also very loving at the same time. We see other times in Scripture where he's not giving the expected response, like the woman, caught in adultery. He says, "Woman, where's your accusers?" Wow, he could have went off on her, and yet he didn't. He gave her the love, the grace, and what was necessary for her to get up and go again. So I think it's just learning that temperance, part of those fruits of the Spirit, and having those healthy boundaries and looking at it from a God perspective.
What are some healthy practices that you guys have done throughout your marriage? How long have you been married for?
We're 28 years.
Oh, wow.
29.
Almost 29.
Yeah.
Okay, so for 29 years, has that been prayer? You have a prayer time together. What are some of those spiritual practices that, through hard times, you're like, well, we always found ourselves doing X, Y, and Z, or
Yeah.
I think through hard times, we just always found ourselves. We have gathered our kids together during those times, and together we battle whatever it is, and we've gotten through it. As far as prayer time together, there are times when we do pray together, but I think for the most part we've established prayer lives, and then we all come together at one point or another, and prayer time at night with the kids, things like that. But I think as far as going through something, the main thing I would say is that we've always pull our kids in closer.
Yeah.
When things like that happen, we pull our kids in as close as we can, and of course pray,
yeah.
Together, fast together, and encourage our kids through it. I think that's the main thing for us, is that we never want our kids to feel like they're the victim.
Yeah.
You're not the victim. It's a spiritual battle. We're going to battle. Here it is. Let's do it. Let's take this on.
You're a soldier.
You're a
Yeah.
soldier. It's not, that they're attacking you personally. There's something spiritual here, and that's what we're going to face, is that spiritual attack.
Something we try to do in our marriage is just frequent check-ins, and take inventory of, all the different areas in our life, whether it's ministry or family. Do you feel like that's something you guys do, and do you do family check-ins with your kids? You have
Yeah.
adult kids now too, so
Yeah, we still do the same thing. So yeah, absolutely, family check-ins. We like to use our vacations about how things are going at home, what's going to be different when we get home. What do we want to see changed? What do we want to see done differently? And then the other thing is just daily. When our kids come in and get in the car from school or come walking through the door, how was your day? And she asked them kind of like a series of questions, and then I kind of just jump on the back of it. But usually it's, how was your day? What was the best part of your day? What did you just love about today? And she's pulling it out of them to see how was their day, what was going on. And then she'll proceed to tell them, well, while you were at school, I did this, I did that. I'll explain to them, things I've done. I've been working on this, been working on that. I want my kids to know that, because the perception of most preachers is they lay around all day, eat fried chicken, and wait for their chance to preach, right? And so I want my kids to know I'm working. I handled these business items for the church. I took care of this. I did that. And it's funny because my kids will see me working and know, oh, Dad's working right now. Let's wait. We'll hit him at another time, and then we'll sit down and talk. But it's those times of just connecting. The other thing that's really like a sacred place for us is our bed. So our kids know if they have something on their heart, something on their mind, they can come lay on our bed and just talk to us. And we'll leave the door open. We let them know it's time to come in. And, hey, I can see something's weighing heavy on your mind. They come and lay across the bed. She's, stringing her fingers through their hair and combing their hair. And I'm over there talking to them, and they just open up. Even to this day, my adult girls will come in and say, I need some time with you guys tonight, and just lay on the bed and just start pouring their heart out to us. I want my girls to feel safe. And especially as Preston's getting older, I want him to be able to learn how to communicate and be able to have that open opportunity. So that's one of the, I think, our favorite times, because we sit there with them, and then we always take a problem and we look at how can we turn this to what positive outcome can we get out of this? How can we turn this around? We know that your day was just one of those terrible, no good, bad days, How can we turn this around? We know you're having a hard time with that person. What can we help you with to turn this around? And usually by the time they're done, we've prayed with them, we've hugged on them, we've cried with them, let them see us get emotional with them, and then turn around, and now we're giving them that positive. Now you can hold your shoulders up, head up, walk out, and you're going to conquer this. And so that's that time on our bed. So,
and sometimes it's helping them write emails for business or school, just to get those that communication across. And so they'll stay up and write their emails, and 1 o'clock in the morning, can I read it to you before I send it off? Kind of things, just to make sure it's written, with the right spirit. But our kids are, they're very open with us, and Reagan's very open with us. She's just a very open kid. She doesn't have any problem expressing her feelings. And the girls too, they're really good about expressing their feelings to us.
It's amazing that you guys give them that space, though, to feel like they're heard and feel like they can come to you guys. And even, we have young children. I want them to always feel secure and confident to talk to us, that we're going to listen to them and take time for them. So I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, at this point, it's kind of the roll of the dice if they're going to lay in our bed or not, because they might pee the bed or something. So we might wait a little bit to just let them come in whenever.
Now, we don't let them sleep there. They can only come and sit down.
Yes,
and
but
they got to leave.
Preston does try to fall asleep while the talking is going on, thinking if I fall asleep, I'll be able to stay here. But no.
Well, our boys wait till we fall asleep, and they come in at like 3 in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Get a door that locks.
I know, but I remember getting turned away. And we have a pallet on our floor. You can get on the pallet.
We went through that season too.
Yeah,
we did.
On the topic of kids, you've raised kids who really, I think, enjoy ministry. They're not just doing it because they have to.
Yeah.
What are some principles that you started at a young age, to instill that in them?
We would teach them that it's a privilege, it's a joy. And, I hear of all these, stories of pastors' kids, and people always tell them it's so hard. We actually stop people in our church that are trying to tell them, oh, it's so hard, it's so difficult to be a preacher's kid. No, it's not. Be quiet. They get privileges that, they like when we go out preaching, we always tried when we're out somewhere to do something close by where we're preaching and say, look, you would have never got this opportunity to see this, experience this. When we would see people getting the Holy Ghost and getting baptized while we were preaching in other churches, think about that. You would have never been able to have the privilege. It's a privilege. And so we always turn that position around and try to make sure they understand it's a joy. There's so many rewards that come from ministry, and we intentionally challenge our kids to look at ministry as this is our life. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is why God created us. This is our purpose. And secondary is making money or, doing other things in life. But living for God, working for God, serving God, that's what we're created for. And so...
My brother said something the other day about it being, looking at it as opportunity and not obligation.
Yeah.
And I really like how he put that into perspective.
Yeah, we always try and make it fun for the kids. We allow them to explore ministry. We don't just lock them into one part, but we allow them to explore ministry. So they've been involved in music. They've been involved in kids. They've been involved in... Reagan's been involved in Bible quizzing a little bit. Mm-hmm. So we let them explore their options until they find that place, or until God tells them, this is your calling, this is your place, this is what you're going to do. Yeah. And Morgan, starting from a young age, 9 years old, she was our first drummer.
Wow.
And at 11, she said, you know what? I like the drums, but I want to learn the keyboard. And started watching YouTube videos, teaching herself how to play keyboard.
Yeah.
And then Lauren at 4 was one of our first praise team singers.
Wow, that's awesome.
So we weren't afraid to use them at a young age. And so for them to grow up loving ministry it was just part of them.
Yeah.
It was part of them.
I think that's the thing is it's really on the perspective. If you will position it so that they understand it's a joy, it's benefit, and there's things that they'll look at and say, well, I don't like doing this part. Hey, let's do this because we're going to get to do this. And then they push through it. But each of your kids are going to have a different personality. Morgan, my oldest, she was my sidekick. Every night of the week I could be at church going, and she was there. Like when she was just a little baby, I was a youth pastor. And so we would do lock-ins, and man, she would hate. My wife would have to take her in the office, hold her down, plug her ears so she couldn't hear that anybody else was still awake. Because if somebody was awake, Morgan wanted to be awake. She didn't want to miss nothing. Lauren, on the other hand, 8:30 came around. She was crying like, I want my bed. Why do I have to be here? And so for her, we had, she would go to sleep and she was out. Reagan is another one she's a trooper. She'll stay up as long as she possibly can. She don't want to miss anything. She pays attention to every detail. And then Preston, he's kind of taken on a little bit of both at times, where there's times where he's like, man, I'm there and I'm not missing a moment. And then there's other times where it's like, yeah, I'm ready to go to sleep. I'm done. Yeah. And so, but it's neat to see each of their personalities. Morgan, like she said, plays the keys, loves the keys. Morgan, though, she don't want to sing unless she has to. Lauren, she'd rather sing. She can play the keys, but she don't want to be behind a keyboard. She'd rather just give her a microphone and let her sing. Reagan is kind of coming into it where she's trying to figure it out. She's starting to sing, but and Preston, he's already calling himself the pastor. He's already picked out his team that's going to replace me with him.
Yeah. He tells the little boys at church, okay, you're going to be my administrator. You're going to be my kid's church pastor. And he's already got his team lined out.
He's already getting his team lined out.
Already on top of it. I want to talk about that worksheet you do on marriage retreat. Did you have another question before I do that?
No, I think.
So you've come to, I think, two. Not youth retreat, marriage retreat rather. We don't want to be doing that at youth retreat.
Not at all.
You've come to two of our marriage retreats though, and I think it's been really beneficial to our married couples. Kind of the lesson you do and the questions you go through. So kind of to end it a little bit, I wanted to see if you go through that.
Yeah. So kind of what happened was it started out actually with a troubled marriage. And I realized communication, they had such a heavy breakdown that they were just like ready to scream at each other over anything. And they're saying the same thing. And then it was like you would separate them and talk to them. I love him. I love her, but they didn't know how to talk to each other. And so they were both very, very hardened and ready to throw in the towel. And from that, I started looking at just like marriage communication exercises online. And I came across like lists of questions. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this really different. And so I told them, I said, all right, I want you two to turn towards each other and hold hands and look deep into each other's eyes. Well, they were like looking at each other like, we don't know if we want to do this. All of a sudden, they went to where they turned. They started holding hands. And I started asking them questions. And it's like, when I think of. And so, for instance, when I think of tenderness, I think of. And I started them through this list of questions. So it's not necessarily answering between them first. And then I've copied and pasted all these questions for years from different places. And then it changes to where I feel loved and nurtured when you. Now I change it from just, tenderness, when I think of nurturing, when I think of feeling loved. These are the things I think of now. I change it to where it's now, if I were able to be more open about my feelings with you, I would tell you. And so I give them this leader question so that they both have to answer it. I do this both in premarital counseling and marriage counseling, because in premarital marriage counseling, I ask them questions like, if there's one thing that has to change about you before I marry you is, and they'll say nothing. I say, you're lying, and because you think about it,
Yeah, we do
sometimes,
something similar for our premarital. You have to name 3 things you don't like.
yeah,
3 things you like and 3 things.
yeah. And the
You
thing
don't.
is I make them in premarital. I'll tell them this is the only time you could hold hands. Any
Yeah.
other time I'll break your hands, And premarital, they're sitting there and they're like, "Ee." And then when I ask them what has to change, it's like all of a sudden it hits them. And then I start talking about, asking them questions like, if there's one thing that I could change about you, if you really loved me, you would. So some of these questions almost sound the same when I'm asking them, but what kind of happens is it causes them to reposition their words, and what you didn't get on the first time, you get on the second question. But it really is just asking these questions. One of your strengths that balances me is. One of my fondest memories with you is. One of our greatest moments talking together was. When I take time just for me, I feel. When I take time just for me, I think you feel. So now it gets them to see perception without killing each other. And so I think those questions are really good. There's another one we do, and it's when you, I feel. And it's an anger marriage exercise. And if you're dealing with anger breakdowns, kind of what happens is you take all of the emotion out of it, and you tell them you can't use, very, like words like very, or, anything that's going to make it sound bigger.
Are you always?
You always. You can't use always, because then I have some stop, list every time always. I want to know at least 5 times. Usually they can't name one,
Right.
It's like, and so it really kind of breaks it down. But the anger one is when you, I feel. It's that simple. When you do this, I feel this. Now you can't attack when you say, I feel. What you're saying is, this is the behavior and this is my feeling. I want them to be able to recognize how the other person's feeling. You never get to that in an argument and anger, so you really don't know, like, how does the other person really think or feel? So now when you break it down to this, you remove all the emotionally loaded language, you remove everything out, and you get to when you, I feel. You're now identifying the root causes.
Right.
Because then you'll stop and you'll listen to what they're saying to each other, and you'll be able to see by their response, okay, this isn't the root. There's something else that's more of the root. Is this the deepest? Is this what you really wanted to ask? Is this what you really? And then they'll say, no, when you, I feel. And it really gets down to opening up. I think we've seen that with the couples we've done, and it has melted them, because now they get down to, wow, they're breaking down anger, they're breaking down the rage, because there's no room for rage. It's just a very direct question, direct response. And then when you see oh great, kind of out of one of the partners there, you're sitting there, you're like, okay, so now you say, let's reverse this. You get to do it. When you, I feel. Man, it's fun. It gets real. Being on this side, it's fun. It's not fun for them at first.
No.
But I'll tell you what, we've used it even between us. Hey, when you do this, this is how I feel. And really what it does is it causes you to stop and go, I wasn't looking at this from the other person's perspective. Because usually we're only ready to fight because it's our perspective. But then when you understand how the other person's feeling, now you can go, how can I support this person in what they're feeling? And what changes do I need to make so that I don't make you feel like that? Because that's not. And I would, look at my wife and say, well, man, that's not how I wanted to make you feel. Or she'll look at me and say, I wasn't trying to make you feel like that. And now it brings the conversation, it just diffuses it and brings it to where it's really about the issue
Right.
that's at hand and not all these existential things that people fight over, because usually the fight isn't even over the item. It's all the extra emotionally loaded things we're grabbing at. Well, you always, and you, and every time, and
You never.
and you never. And what happens is when we start grabbing for those things, really what we're doing, we're dancing around the topic
Right.
or the center thing that really needs to be addressed, because either we're a coward and we don't want to address it, or we know that by addressing this with them, I also have to make change.
Right.
So that's why it brings it all the way down to that. So
When I've seen you do it at our marriage retreats, it's almost like a softness kind of comes over
Yeah.
just because, I mean, it does for us. Well, for me, he doesn't cry, but it's brought out some of those softer emotions and tenderness where you feel.
Yeah, and for some of those who are listening, I mean, some of the questions might seem simple, but we really are bad at communicating with
Yeah.
each other. We're good at talking.
Yeah.
Everyone can talk, but when it comes to constructive communication with your spouse, I would say nine out of 10 people are really bad at it. So this is a tool that kind of takes away, it keeps it very simple. It takes away the anger, the resentment
Yeah.
that builds up,
Defensiveness.
and it just gets real simple and down to it.
Communication questions, you can find them all over the internet, and it's just things like, a couple of them that really, if I could change one thing about our relationship, it would be, and then they both have a chance to say what they would change. Now,
And here's the reality about those questions. Most of the time when you get into the busyness of life and you're working, it's a, hey, how you doing? My day was fine. Let's eat dinner. Let's go to bed. These questions aren't coming up.
no, they're not. Or, hey, these are the things we've accomplished over the last 3-5 years, and what is coming for us next? What do we want to see? There's times we just did this again this week while we've been here in Mattoon. We've looked at each other and said, hey, over this next year, what do we want to see for us, for the kids, for the church? And what do we want to see in the next year? By the end of this year, what are you feeling is going to change? Who's going to be a part of our life and who's not going to be a part of our life? Who do we have to look at saying, there's a possibility that if they aren't a part of the church, who do we have to train? What do we have to do? Because reality is not everybody that's with you today will be with you this time next year.
Right.
And sometimes we pretend like it's always going to be there, but there's no backup plans. And the other thing is, in the marriage specifically, people don't have a goal. There's no 3-year goal. There's no 5-year goal. No, what happens when our kids are grown and gone?
Right.
It's like, what are our plans? What do we want to accomplish? Where do we want to go? What do we want to do? And it's like, we had a talk one day not too long ago about, hey, our kids are at the place where it's time to get a sitter and just the two of us go hold hands.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a kid in between us now. It's the two of us. And I always joke, I'll take as many kids as I can get. But at the same time, I do look forward to, I've made up in my mind, my goal is to grow old with her.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be that little couple walking in to the diner, sitting down and, having a cup of coffee at breakfast and, ordering our eggs and bacon and having to make sure we got our teeth in, and all that kind of stuff, and there's goals. And I think what happens is people are in it as long as it's working. And then for some, they're in it until something better comes along. I always tell her there's nothing better. This is it. And we're going to make it the best.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good note to end on. Kind of before we leave, I didn't really introduce you a whole lot to our audience. Kind of let us know what you're working on over in California. Just some quick update. How many churches you pastor?
So we pastor Connecting Point Community Church. God's blessed us tremendously. We've got 4 actual physical locations, 5 churches that are Connecting Point locations. We have another church that's out from under us. It's autonomous, but it's a Romani work. And then we have another church that we have baptized the pastor. I'm his pastor. We've changed their doctrine from a Trinitarian doctrine to oneness doctrine, and all of their bylaws, we changed them so that they're under us. We have another work that, honestly, I thought by now we would probably have a location out of it. It's about 2 hours from me.
Okay.
But every Thursday morning, there's a faithful group that they are on Zoom, and we have now baptized right at number 60. So, in fact, I just found out there's 2 more, so that'll put us at 61 by the time I get home that have been baptized from that group. And they're chomping at the bit to get their own church. They drive to one of my locations on Sundays, 1 hour each direction at least. They rent a 15 pastor van, they fill up vehicles, but that's a location that's kind of becoming a location right now, and I've got a couple helping me, but God's really, really blessed us. We've been blessed to be able to be the pastor to others. We have the missionaries, the Wrights to Bangladesh. They're now basing out of our church. I'm their pastor. And then in Connecticut, Vernon, Connecticut, there's 2 churches there that the Blacks, they're a tremendous family. I'm their pastor and overseer to the church. And God's really blessed us. We've got more coming. I think Connecticut will probably have 3 or 4 churches by this time next year, maybe 5. And then SoCal, better look out, because we've got a couple more churches that are on the rise. So
Awesome.
I'm excited.
Well, we pray God continues to bless you, and
Thank you for your influence.
yes, it's always good seeing you. I'm sure we'll see you again either this year or next. So
Yeah.
thanks for doing the podcast with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.